When you hear somebody talking about Russian games, you probably think of something like CSGO or Dota, neither of which were actually made by Russian people, but because of the huge Russian player bases that they have, they will often be associated with Russian people. Maybe somebody here thought of something like Heroes 5. Great game, by the way, but not what we're going to be talking about today. Growing up, I played tons of different games, a lot of which I barely remember at this point. Many of them are more akin to fever dreams, but a big part of that were games made by Russian developers. Though a lot of these were localized at one point or another for English-speaking audiences to try broaden their horizons, many didn't actually accumulate any Western audiences and are only really known to Russian people. Today I'm going to show you guys some of these obscure Russian games from my childhood. And before we get started, hi, my name is Angelika. Если вы еще не догадались, нет, английский не мой родной язык. Хотя в Ирландии я живу уже 19 лет, поэтому он мне типа родной. Но вообще мой родной язык это русский. By the way, if you didn't expect my level of English, you might be even more surprised to find out that I actually learned English and improved my language skills through playing video games. Time spent doing something for the mind and self-improvement is time well spent, and it's super valuable. If you're looking to add more value to your life in a similar way, then I would recommend that you check out today's sponsor of this video, Brilliant. Brilliant is a tool that empowers you to learn and get smarter every day with thousands of interactive lessons in mathematics, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. What I personally love about it is that it is hands-on learning. I actually became fluent in 2 languages while playing video games, so I know firsthand just how effective this particular approach to learning is. It's really exciting that you get to try out this sort of active learning method for complicated subjects like maths and programming, outside of a traditional lecture style of learning, which doesn't actually work for everybody. But you do still get that really high standard of information as you would in a university setting, for example, because all of the content on Brilliant was crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Microsoft, and Google. Learning and gaining knowledge in this way is absolutely priceless because not only can it open the door for you on brand new ventures, it can also help you level up on your current career path. Now, I understand that this is a lot easier said than done because if you're like me and you're working or you have a family, you can't just go out and study to go scale up in a meaningful way. But thanks to the Brilliant app, you can actually learn on the go with fun and engaging lessons. You might be commuting on the train, and instead of looking at cat memes, you have grasped some of the basic concepts of Python. You're just there, in real time, getting into the programmer mindset and learning how to solve complex problems in manageable chunks of code. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, you can go to brilliant.org/Angelikatosh, you can use the QR code here on screen, or you can just use the link down below in my description. You'll also get 20% off for an annual premium subscription. Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. And now, I'm gonna show you guys these games in no particular order. Some of these will probably be more familiar to you, maybe not, but the first game that I want to discuss is Magia Kрови, which directly translates to blood magic, but for some reason they called the localized English version Dawn of Magic, which is why it was super confusing for me to try and find information on the game in English, just out of curiosity. I was super disappointed that I couldn't actually get a hold of this first original game anywhere in Russian. It's not on Steam, it's not on GOG, only Dawn of Magic 2, which I'm told is essentially the same thing, but I am kind of noticing some differences between that and like that first original version, mainly the fact that I don't have it in Russian, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because the voice acting in English is so bad.
Return the book, young man. It looks like you have no good use for it.
That original first version that I played all those years ago is either completely unattainable or it's on some dodgy website that I just refuse to download anything off. So to put my thoughts together for this one, I had to go by existing gameplay videos and screenshots, as well as my memories of the game from almost 20 years ago. This is me playing it, by the way, on my pro-Slavic gamer setup. If you grew up in a post-Soviet country, this is what your original gaming setup probably looked like also. And maybe it still does, and if so, based. So, what is Dawn of Magic? This is a Russian Diablo clone that for some reason was so deeply disturbing to me as a child that I never got very far in it, and yet somehow I managed to play quite a lot of it. I probably still have this somewhere in my house, but this is what the CD box looked like for the game, and eventually I guess the actual CD was just too scratched up to run, so I probably couldn't play it anymore because of that. This game had a nightmare-inducing introductory cinematic, which was slightly traumatizing, even revisiting it now as an adult. You could pick one of 4 heroes, and this is so bizarre, but stay with me. The Awkward Scholar. His delicate nature may have an adverse effect on his energy, yet his intellect is remarkable, so a mage class. Definitely not Harry Potter. The Baker's Wife. She is a friendly, plump lady who loves to spoil people with her bread and sweet pastries. While her energy is significant, her intellect is not outstanding. I don't know, some sort of a tank class, I would guess. The Fat Friar, who is definitely not Deckard Cain. This middle-aged gentleman's experience can only be measured by the size of his stomach. Okay, I'm sorry, middle-aged? Like, what's middle-aged here? He looks like he could be my great-grandfather. And the size of his stomach, they're calling him fat, but my man looks like he hasn't had a meal since his wife left him for the baker. Oh wait. And finally, the Weird Gypsy. Okay, look, so this game was translated from Russian. Like, in the original, she was called Stranная, which is actually directly translated to strange gypsy and not weird. Like, I feel like weird is a bit of a harsh term here, and not really the intended one either. I think that they meant strange as in mysterious. Anyway, she has practiced the ancient mystical arts of palmistry and tarot. As a result, she has become a true expert in matters of fate and chance. But all of this aside, it's kind of wild how cool the game actually looks. Like, you can definitely tell this is old as hell, but I don't think that this aged particularly poorly. I couldn't actually begin to tell you the lore of this game and what actually the whole point is. It's a lot deeper than I remember just from looking into it now. But to start off, once you've chosen your main hero, you can choose for them to be good, evil, or neutral, and I believe that this also affects your endgame as well as how other characters in the game interact with you. The music in this game is really nice, and for being a Diablo clone, there's something about the game that kind of gives it its own vibe. You start off in this Hogwarts-looking place with all these other students, and you're kind of off from there. The game has a rather extensive manual, and to be honest, in terms of builds and that, I don't think it's as straightforward as Diablo 2 was, for example, but it is my understanding that you can do some pretty crazy things with this. There are a few downsides here, like, for example, the scaling of the mobs seems to be a bit of an issue. I've looked around online and I've seen some people complain that at one point the game gets too hard too quick. Also, a lot of people aren't really a fan of the camera, which personally I don't mind too much. But the highlight of this game for me and for like everyone else that's played it is that one song about Brantazябra.
Сон села за горой, Брантазябра ходит злой, Брантазябра ходит злой. Я с дубинкою идю, Брантазябру победю, Брантазябру победю. Ой, Брантазябра, ой, победю, ой, Брантазябра, ой, победю.
There is absolutely no reason for this to go that hard, but it does. I hope to one day play this game again and experience it for myself and maybe actually figure out the lore and finish it, which is why I didn't delve too deeply into this for this video. I kind of want to rediscover it myself, if I'm honest. So for the next game that I want to talk about, and I will be so impressed if anybody here has heard of it, is Dead Hunt. This game is both a lot more and a lot less than you'd expect. So unlike The Dawn of Magic, there's no lore here. There's no story, there is no reason for these things to be here and be the way that they are. And yet, here you have it. This is a first-person arcade shooter where you have to kill waves and waves of zombies, skeletons, and spiders, I think? There are 4 episodes in total with 40 missions. The whole time you are pretty much between 2 arenas, this Stonehenge looking place, and some sort of a hellish plane of oblivion, which is actually my favorite of the 2. There's not a huge amount of variety when it comes to the mob types. It really is mostly the zombies, and sometimes they wear armor or they'll have a different weapon, but that's about it. Each of the levels present a different challenge that you need to beat in order to complete the level, and that's really it. It's not otherworldly, it's not super innovative, but this game gets a massive, fat gold star for its soundtrack. The music in this game has no business going that hard. As funny as this will sound, this game has one of the most unique and memorable game soundtracks of all time. I think that this game is really about the time and the place. It's a sort of you had to be there moment. Obviously, downloading this now in 2025, you're not gonna feel it. For myself, it has a bit of a nostalgia factor, but 20 years ago, this was such a hell yeah moment. The inspiration for it was actually a top-down shooter game called Crimson Land. As for any other information on it, the only thing I could find was the back of the game's CD box in Russian, and the description's pretty funny. He doesn't know how to gallantly speak to women. No riz. He doesn't know any foreign languages. He doesn't watch TV or listen to the radio. He doesn't even know his own name. Hell, he doesn't know almost anything. He's sounding a lot like Jon Snow. But he does know a few things. How to run fast and how to pull the trigger on time. It's a bit bizarre, and for how underwhelming it is as a whole, it's actually quite thoughtful in ways that you wouldn't expect. But yeah, the highlight for me here is definitely the soundtrack, which I do recommend that you listen to in full because it really is super impressive. The next game that I want to talk to you about is Allods Online. This game I'm sure loads of you have probably heard of. Here's the thing. World of Warcraft has pretty much killed every other MMO for me. I was never able to enjoy another MMO after playing WoW, but one that I did give a solid try was Allods Online. Now, I played this way back in 2009 or even 2010, so I'm sure since then it has probably changed quite a lot and it's a very different game. Kind of like WoW has progressed a lot from those times as well. But what I do remember from it is how wrong it felt to play it. It was a really strange mixture of concepts that I thought were actually really cool and original, and some straight up rip-offs right out of World of Warcraft. I think maybe I stuck with it for a while because of how WoW-like it was, but it was in an uncanny valley kind of way. Instead of your typical elves, you had these fairy elf type people, and also there was a race where you played as these 3 little guys all at once. The world there felt so familiar, but different, and something was definitely off about some of the races. Like, it just felt wrong even looking at them. I can tell this is supposed to be an orc, but there's something not right with him. It wasn't a bad world to explore for a while. I never did grasp the story or exactly what I was doing, but as with any MMO, I'm sure it was very deep and complex, and I also think that I didn't really get into it or invest myself in it too much because I played too much World of Warcraft. Not saying that it's a bad game by any means, but you do get to a certain point while you're playing it where you're kind of saying to yourself, well, I could just be playing World of Warcraft right now. I was reading some reviews to see what other people think about it. It's got a very mid kind of score overall, but the biggest gripe that people seem to have with it now is that it is very pay to win. Back when I played it, I remember it being totally free, and I don't have any recollection of any kind of in-game store or anything similar. But there you go, eventually these things, one way or another, will be subject to that kind of monetization. Some people are saying that the pay to win here is so bad that it's almost pay to exist, because it's very hard to keep up with other players if you don't cough up the money. And that review is from 2023, by the way. If that really is the case, then I think that that's terrible. But again, like I said, a lot of these things eventually do turn into that, and if I'm honest, Allods seems to have that sort of aesthetic where it would have turned into that sort of game one day. I don't know what it is about it, but looking at it makes me feel like I'm about to get a pop-up on my discounted crystals deal, which ends in 10 hours, so hurry up. Now, this last game that I want to talk about is super niche, and if you're not Russian and you somehow know about its existence, I will be absolutely wowed, because there's no way. Now for this, you need a little bit of background. In Russian folklore, we have the tales of the 3 legendary strong men, or bogatyri. Each have their own separate legends and tales. You had Ilya Muromets, Dobrynya Nikitich, and Alyosha Popovich. In some places, they're described as the original superheroes. They were these really strong, big men, fictional but some parts perhaps based in reality or real stories from the regions, really an image of peak masculinity and an example that young Russian boys and men should follow. There were these animated films made about them that I watched when I was a kid, and they were quite good, sort of humoristic, not too serious, not like the typical Soviet cartoons about legends and similar stories that you would watch. But yeah, they were quite good, and I remember our favorite being the one about Alyosha Popovich. The film was great, but even better still was the point-and-click adventure game that was made based on it. I am a huge fan of this genre of games. I really loved Monkey Island games when I was a kid, and there's also an unfinished Warcraft adventure game, so it's based on Thrall's escape from Durnhold, which I do hope to cover on this channel at some point because that's a whole other world to explore. And as far as those types of games go, this was great. The art is beautiful. The music was also brilliant, and all the vibes that you would expect from old Russian legends and fairy tales are captured here so perfectly. From the bright and lively village, to the dark and eerie forest, the hut with the chicken feet. For me, of course, it's really nostalgic, but if you haven't played it before and you want to get a feel for those sort of Russian fairy tale vibes, I would highly recommend it. Although I'm really not sure where exactly you would get it in 2025, but if somebody knows, let me know. And that particular game kind of follows his story as it is in the animated film, as it is in his legends. A bit of a hidden gem, and one that I think every little Russian kid should experience at one point or another. But yeah, that about covers it for the obscure Russian games from my childhood. The ones that I can remember, at least. I think that, in part, these games have influenced my overall taste for video games, even if in the smallest ways. Kids from Eastern Europe in general, I think we all grew up with similar fairy tales and themes in stories, and seeing them in games and being able to experience them outside of somebody reading a story to you or watching a film is something really special. I think that some of these things have elements that I always look for in games, even now. It's a sort of unexplainable thing where you don't necessarily have to have a game based in Eastern Europe, but it's the way that people behave, the way that certain themes are presented. I think that's why I like Polish games also. It's just in ways that I cannot exactly point out, they make you feel like home. None of the games that I mentioned here are by any means masterpieces, and mostly they don't really hold up today, but because of those elements that I mentioned, I just have such a sweet spot for them, and it's so nice to go back to them and explore them, especially now as an adult who has played so many mostly Western games. Please let me know in the comments below if you've ever played any of them, if you've heard of them, or if you're now going to try them. I'm super curious to know. And I would love to hear from non-Russians as well, what they think about all of this. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I do hope you enjoyed. As always, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate all the support. Big shout out to my channel members. Thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you all in the next video. Be seeing you. Bye!